For the first time, the Houston Texans made the playoffs.
And for the first time, they've won the AFC South Division.
Welcome to Radio Faces, brought to you by HCC TV. I'm Indy Kalu, and he is John the General McClain, Hall of Fame sports writer for the Chronicle. You can catch him on Sports Radio 610, and when you're in front of your computers, always do what I do and read his amazing articles, especially about this championship team.
Indy Kalu played defensive end 12 years in the NFL. He's been to the playoffs. He's been in a championship game. He knows what it likes, and that's why we've got his expertise right here on Radio Faces at Houston Community College's Main Street studio. We think we got a great show. We love to talk Texans.
Well, we're celebrating. Everybody here is happy. Let me bring up a somber note. With the success of the Houston Texans, this great defense, I have a feeling with all the vacancies we're going to see at the head coaching position job, somebody's going to come knocking on the door, Wade Phillips, and I don't blame them because he took this defense, which was one of the worst in the NFL, to the best this year in just 1 year. With that amazing turnaround, John, you have to think that somebody's going to be asking for Wade Phillips to lead their entire team to the promised land.
And starting Wednesday in the Chronicle, and we'll be on Chronicle.com's Ultimate Texans all week, we have a story by Jeffrey Martin just about Wade Phillips becoming a head coach again. He's been to the playoffs with every team he's coached other than as an interim. And I think a team that just wants to get to the playoffs, I think Wade's going to get interviews. I think when he starts talking about his record's good. The only thing bad about Wade as a head coach, he only won one playoff game. But I don't know who would take over this defense, but Gary Kubiak said, him being a longtime assistant who wanted to be a head coach, he understands he's all for his assistants getting head coaching jobs. But you never know. Maybe they'll lose the last three and Crater and Wade won't get any interviews, but we know that's not going to happen.
Well, he may say that he wants his assistants to get interviews, but trust me, when the cameras are down, the lights are off, I'm sure he's saying, please stay, Wade, because what he's been able to do with this defense has just been amazing. And when you talk amazing, you have to talk about Kevin Walter. Going into the Cincinnati game, the guy was sick. I remember Coach Kubiak said he was pale as a ghost in the hotel. He didn't know if he was going to make it, and all Kevin Walter does, 6 catches, 76 yards, the most important catch being the game-winning touchdown. And this is what Kevin Walter gives you. You hear a lot of people complain, why did they re-sign him? Why did they give them his extension? There isn't anybody saying that Kevin Walter is their premier wide receiver, but he is one of their premier football players. This is a guy that plays receiver. He could also run down on kickoffs if you need to make tackles. Never had more than 900 yards receiving, but he's a sure-handed, very good pass route running wide receiver. And I think the way he plays makes it easier for a guy like T.J. Yates to succeed early in his career.
He's also a very good blocker. If your wideouts can't block in this offense, they're not going to play. One of the things he was looking all white about, he'd spent the night before in the hospital. He had been sick and throwing up. Right. He had to get IV'd all night. I don't understand how a player can be so ill, be in a hospital all night, get an IV'd, and then come out and play so well. Is that the miracles of medicine, or is it talk about the player?
It's a little bit of both, the miracles of medicine and adrenaline. It's something to play on Sundays. I don't care if you've been in the league 1 year or if you've been 20 years. When that Sunday comes, the adrenaline starts to pump. It cures a whole lot of ailments.
I know you had your eye on another receiver.
Yeah, a tight end type receiver, Owen Daniels. What's been going on with Owen Daniels? Where's he been? Without Andre Johnson, why hasn't he been catching storm? 2 reasons. Joel Dreesen has been a very good backup tight end who's leading the team in touchdown receptions. And when Andre Johnson's out, I feel like a lot of teams have been focusing on Owen Daniels. Cincinnati didn't do that last week when they played. That's why he had 7 catches, 100 yards, and showed everybody why he went to the Pro Bowl before he was injured. I think Owen Daniels is back. And even though Andre Johnson won't be around for the next couple, I'm speculating, regular season games, Owen Daniels is going to be a huge factor.
You'd have to be living on Pluto not to know what Tebow time is. But what about TJ time?
It's time.
TJ Yates is the first quarterback since the merger in 1970 to lead his team to fourth quarter comeback victories in his first 2 starts. What does that say about T.J. Yates?
It says he is cool, calm, and collected. This is one guy you could argue that he's surrounded by better talent than the other rookies in the NFL. But guess what? He's a 5th-round pick. He started off 3rd string on the roster. He is shown that he is the value pick of the draft when you look at what he's doing. I really like the way he plays. He doesn't get rattled. I remember when John Abraham gave him a crushing blow when he sacked him against Atlanta. He got up, hit his offensive lineman on the head and said, let's go. This guy doesn't act like a rookie, and I think that's why he's having the success he's having.
One of these shows, we're going to find out why he went in the 5th round, which still just blows me away. Now, you played for Gary Kubiak. The players respect Gary. He doesn't like to embarrass players on TV, but he'll chew guys out behind the scene. But one of the reasons they like him is after the game in which they came from behind to win in Cincinnati 20-19, we were in the media room. And we were listening with the door a little bit open. I didn't open it. It was open. And we could hear what was going on in the dressing room. Usually we can't hear. And Kubiak got up, and he gave a game ball to Andre Johnson, who couldn't play, of course. And Andre got up and made a little speech, and the players started chanting. And then Andre, I'm told, almost had tears in his eyes. And he did later. When you see a gesture like that, as a player, what does it mean to see something like that?
It lets you know that your coach, who also played in the league, is a player's coach, and he understands what guys are feeling. After all that jubilation, winning the AFC South, he didn't forget about his player. He knows that the team wouldn't be where they're at without Andre Johnson. And for him to know that, all the other guys are going to respect Coach Kubiak for that. Andre Johnson is. It just lets you know that he's thinking of the guys that weren't on the field also. And he's also mentioned Mario Williams, Sharpton, guys who aren't on the field able to enjoy this time. And he's a player. He understands what they're going through. He knows it's a bittersweet moment for these guys. Matt Schaub, another one. And that just lets you know and feel that this guy, he's a coach, but he understands me as a player.
You know, I thought the first half they were terrible. We'd be remiss if we didn't talk about it because they proved they're still capable of stinking it up. They had 4 turnovers in this game. They've been great about turnovers. They were plus 12. They were minus 2 in this game. They were horrible in the first half. Ben Tate fumbling on the 1-yard line. But they bounced back. Does that worry you when you see the way they played in the first half?
If anything, it gives me hope when you talk about their playoff run. I don't care if you're talking about Green Bay, New England, Pittsburgh, all the elite teams. They've all gone through adversity, and you always ask yourself, how do you bounce back from it? Just like you mentioned, that first half was probably one of the worst halves in football for the Texans this season. Then they come out and have one of the best second halves. T.J. Yates was a huge part of that. So if they're in a playoff game and they get down, he could just go back in his memory and say, you know what, we were down in Cincinnati, and I found a way to lead us back. So I think that is something that's going to teach them and carry them throughout the playoff run.
Their next man up motto is being stretched to the extreme again. Right guard Mike Brazel played on a broken leg, a fractured fibula in the second half. He epitomizes what this team is all about. Antoine Caldwell will step in. What do you think about Antoine, a former 3rd-round pick who has started?
That's what I like, that he has starting experience, and you're right, next man up. It goes more to show about Brazel and his toughness to finish the game to play on a broken leg. This is a guy who played in NFL Europe, who wasn't drafted. He's been cut, and now he's a starter. So I hate to see him go down. Again, when they're going through things that they've never been through before, Mike Brazel's a big part of it, but Caldwell, I don't think they're going to miss a beat.
They're hoping Brazel can come back like Daniel Manning,
right.
But Daniel Manning's got about 200 pounds on his fractured fibula. Mike Brazel's got more than 300. Will that make a difference?
It definitely makes a difference. When you have injuries to your lower extremities, your weight matters.
Okay. When we come back from this break, we're going to do our smart decisions of the week. Stay tuned.
I remember the moment clearly.
I'll never forget that moment.
As long as I live.
I realized at that moment, when we first saw the damage, these people really needed us. And I was going to make a difference, right here in my community. Together with local responders, we cleared trees and collapsed walls. We had to get to the family trapped beneath. As a citizen soldier, I made a difference.
Be there for your community at NationalGuard.com.
Welcome back to Radio Faces. I'm John McClain from the Chronicle, Chron.com, Sports Radio 610. He's Indy Kalu, Sports Radio 610, 12-year veteran of the National Football League. This is where we have our HCC Smart Decision of the Week. As always, Indy goes first.
Well, my smart decision was a show of confidence from Gary Kubiak. After T.J. Yates threw the interception in the Cincinnati game, he went right back to throwing the ball. His very next play, the play call was a pass, and he continued to throw throughout the game. Matter of fact, he ended up throwing 44 times and only had that one interception. But I think that really boosted T.J. Yates' confidence, and it lets him know you don't ever want to turn the ball over, but it's going to happen. You're going to throw an interception, and if your leader, if your head coach, the guy calling plays, if he starts to panic, you're going to lose confidence in yourself. With what Kubiak did and his play calling after the interception, I think that speaks volumes for the confidence that he showed towards T.J. Yates, and it's going to carry him a long way.
How much does it speak about him being a former quarterback who's been in that situation?
Yeah, again, just like you talked about earlier in the show, giving the game ball to Andre Johnson, I think that's because he was tapping into his former playing days and realizing what it means to be injured and not part of a team. But being a former quarterback, you realize you're going to make mistakes, and you want your coach to have that confidence in you. So with him doing that, it definitely shows Gary Kubiak was an NFL player at one time.
My smart decision of the week really goes to dumb decisions by the Bengals, but it goes to Eric Winston. Fourth quarter, Texans have the ball, and I thought it was a terrible call by the officials. Throw a short pass to Arian Foster. He gets hit by Ray Maluga. I didn't think he had control of the ball, but they called it a fumble. Well, the Bengals, instead of falling on it, you know your guys are taught, fall on the football. They tried to pick it up. And they did pick it up. Chris Myers forced the fumble, and everybody from the Bengals was trying to score a touchdown at the 10-yard line, but Eric Winston jumped on it at the 2, and then they go 88 yards to a field goal. I thought that was a very smart play by Eric and a really stupid play by the Bengals. Why do guys continually do that, especially in that end of the field, instead of just fall on the football?
Well, I guarantee you, I'm sure there hasn't been a study done, but I know these guys were thinking, the defensive players for the Cincinnati Bengals, if we don't pick this ball up and score, we may never get another point on the board because we're facing that great Houston Texan defense who's just really been handling it to our offense. So I really think it was more out of respect for the Houston Texan defense that the Cincinnati defensive players were trying to scoop it up and put points on the board, because you're right. They teach you from day one, when the ball's on the ground and you're a defensive player, not only do you fall on it, but get in the fetal position so they can't rip it from up under you when you're in the pile. But I really think it played subconsciously in their mind that, you know what, it's going to be tough for our offense to score. If we can scoop this up and get in the end zone, it'll help us win the game.
I think they're thinking about Sports Center. He's Indy Kalu. I'm John McClain. When we come back, we're going to go to Indy's Weekly Chalk Talk. Stay tuned.
Beautiful, isn't it?
You expect options everywhere else. Why not with your medical treatment? Talk with your doctor to explore all your options and find what's right for you. Visit ahrq.gov.
As always, thanks for joining us. And now I get a chance to do Chalk Talk. The pass rushers for the Houston Texans defensive team have an arduous task in trying to contain Cam Newton. A lot of times you hear the NFL experts and analysts talking about not breaking containment, and I'm going to give you an illustration of what that means. When you're going against a quarterback like Cam Newton, you want to make sure that you get pressure on him, but you don't allow him to break containment, and this is what that means. When you have your outside rusher rushing, he needs to make sure he stays wide and keeps Cam Newton in the pocket, and on both sides of that. You want to keep him bottled up and have him throw you the ball and not beat you with his legs. Unfortunately, a guy like Cam Newton, he could beat you two ways. But when you hear guys breaking containment, this is typically what happens. The defensive end tries an inside move, gets washed down by the offensive tackle, and it allows the quarterback to break containment, run towards the alley, and that does one of two things. It either gives him a chance, more time to throw the ball, or to just run and sets up one-on-one matchups in the open field with other defenders, and 9 times out of 10, Cam Newton's going to win that battle. So it is very important for these defensive ends, outside linebackers, anybody rushing from the outside, to keep Cam Newton contained. It's much easier said than done. If you are going to try an inside move, you're taught to always come back outside and make sure the quarterback doesn't beat you to the sideline, because if he does that, that could be trouble for your defense. I'm Indy Kalu, and that's this week's Chalk Talk.
Welcome back to Radio Faces. I'm John McClain from the Chronicle, Chron.com and Sports Radio 610. He's Indy Kalu from Sports Radio 610. This is where we go around the league, and I know we're going to talk about coaches who've been fired. You take it away. First up, Kansas City. This time last year, they're celebrating divisional champions. Guess what? Now the quarterback of the team, the head coach, Todd Haley, has been fired after a 5-8 start. He's no longer the coach. And let's put it all in perspective. That would be like Kubiak being fired this time next year. We all know that's not going to happen, but you talk about what have you done for me lately in the NFL. This is a perfect example of that. A guy who won the division last year. This year he doesn't even get to finish the season. I was amazed, and I don't understand why they do it now, but like you and I talked about off camera, there must have been something going on behind the scenes for them to pull the trigger during the season. If Gary Kubiak does what Todd Haley does, he'll get fired next year before the season's over. One of the things they like in that organization, they like to be things normal. They want to be clean cut. They want to be like the Patriots. They want to be like the old Niners. And Todd didn't like that. So defiantly, he grew a beard. He would show up at news conferences wearing raggedy Bill Belichick type clothes. Well, he hadn't won 3 Super Bowls like Bill Belichick, so he did it almost asking to be fired. And there were reports the week before he said he knew he was going to get fired, so why not just go ahead and quit and not give him the satisfaction? Obviously, there are a lot of problems behind the scenes in Kansas City. One of the coaches whose name's brought up, considering Romeo Crennel's defensive coordinator, Scott Pioli runs the show, is Josh McDaniels, who has been the offensive coordinator this year at St. Louis. He's really done a fantastic job, hasn't he? And I can't imagine that Scott Pioli would hire McDaniels just to reunite all those Patriot people. It just doesn't make any sense to me. Now, let's see, Cowboys. Cowboys, I know you feel terrible about the Cowboys. You talk about what's happened to them the last 2 weeks. Well, you talk about things that don't make sense. I really thought the Cowboys, they were going to turn their season around. They jumped off the back of Laurent Robinson and DeMarco Murray, but it seems like they're just not ready to take that next step to become the NFC East Division champs. And you saw that when they played against the Giants. They gave up 2 touchdowns in the last 3 minutes and 14 seconds. And the problem with this loss is Tony Romo actually played very well. He had a good game, 4 touchdowns, 21 of 31 for passing. He did what he was supposed to do at the quarterback position, but Ryan-led defense, they couldn't hold the New York Giants in the last 3 minutes and 14 seconds. I think there's problems all around. They're still in the hunt. They have the same record as the New York Giants, and it may come down to that last regular season game when they play the Giants, but I just feel they don't know how to seize the opportunity, and there's something wrong with the Dallas Cowboys, and they're not going to win that division. There's a really interesting column on NFL.com by Mike Lombardi analyzing what he calls their 4-minute offense and telling how they try not to lose, which I think is kind of interesting to the Cowboys, because I always think of Romo throwing the ball down the field, but it's really kind of an indictment of Jason Garrett's play calling. But if you're a Cowboy fan, and I know there's 1 or 2 out there, check out NFL.com. Mike Lombardi is very, very analytical, and I thought very telltale about what's happening with them. Now, I know you being an old defensive end, you threatened Michael Strahan's pass record a couple times for sacks, and you have an affinity for pass rushers. Tell us about Jared Allen and what's happening with him. Well, what's going on right now, this time while we're taping, he's leading the NFL in sacks with 17.5 sacks. And I'll tell you what's amazing. That's a huge number. That's a number guys like myself dream of having when we played. But he's doing this on a losing team. So my point is, when he's rushing the passer, when he's getting these sacks, it's early in the game because his team is usually playing from behind, and the offense that he's going against is typically running the ball. It's not like when
Robert Mathis and Dwight Freeney, when they were in their heydays with Peyton Manning, had a chance to rush the passer for the entire game because they're going against offenses trying to catch up. So that's why what he's doing is amazing, and I'm rooting for him to get to 22 sacks and tie or beat Michael Strahan's sack record.
Now, Coach, I want to talk to you about being fired. Tony Sperano in Miami, they fired him with 3 games left. They lost at Philadelphia. They'd won 3 in a row at home, and they've played hard all year. And they're going to keep the general manager, Jeff Ireland. Now, the only reason to keep Jeff Ireland is he went to Baylor. By the way, RG3. Congratulations, Robert Griffin III.
Definitely.
But Tony Sperano, a good guy. His players played hard for him. They're going to go out and get somebody that's a quote-unquote big name. But I felt sorry for the guy. It's almost like they're afraid he might lead them to another victory or two, which might keep them from getting a big-time quarterback that they want. But I just thought that was terrible for him. Okay, now, we mentioned Tebow time, TJ time. What do you think about Tim Tebow continuing to pull them out 6-1, I believe, as a 7-game starter?
I think it's up to people like you, the Hall of Fame journalists, to make sure it's the Denver Broncos winning these games and not just Tim Tebow.
So it's Bronco time.
It's Bronco time. It's Willis McGahee time. It's Brian Dawkins time. It's Texas A&M's Von Miller time. These guys are playing good team football like the hometown team here, the Houston Texans. And despite what you're seeing at the quarterback position and the lack of stats, they continue to win. Now, I will be remiss if I don't admit that what he's doing in the fourth quarter is amazing, the poise that he's keeping and leading his teams to these victories. But better quarterbacks aren't going to have to lead their team to victories every fourth quarter that they play in. I like what he does, and I'll even say they don't need to look for a quarterback, but we have to remember this is a team sport, the ultimate team sport, and the Denver Broncos team is what's doing the amazing acts over there.
The New York Times has dubbed him the Mile High Messiah.
Wow.
Now, I'm hoping in the playoffs that they actually come to Reliance Stadium so we can see Tebow time versus TJ time.
Nice.
Because I think at some point, Tebow time is going to run its course, and he's going to have to do a better job of being a legitimate NFL quarterback who's more consistent, because at some point, some defense is going to stop them in the fourth quarter. Now, speaking of time, is it Green Bay's time to win the last 3 and be 16-0?
If I'm the head coach, if I'm the GM, I call the entire team into a team meeting room, and I say, you know what, just to end all the speculation, my starters, we're going to approach the last 3 games like we've approached every other game this season. I think it would be huge if a team could go undefeated, win the Super Bowl. I know a lot of people saying, well, the ultimate goal is the Super Bowl. That's all that matters. Well, you know what? If I ask anybody out there right now, name me who won the Super Bowl 3 years ago, quick, you'll have to think back about it. But if they go undefeated, that's something they'll be telling their grandkids about, and that's something that won't be forgotten, just like the old Miami Dolphin team.
What I like about Mike McCarthy, he's not telling them like a no-hitter, don't talk about it. He's letting them talk about it. They're not looking at the last game. They're looking at the next game, but it's important for them. And what better team in the NFL to be the first 19-0 team than the Green Bay Packers? Can you do that?
No, I can't.
Come on, you talk deep anyway. Let me hear you say
Green Bay Packers.
The Green Bay Packers.
But you sound like you should be on TV.
On the frozen tundra. When we come back, we're going to make the call. Stay tuned.
Cook foods to the right temperature using a food thermometer. 3,000 Americans will die from food poisoning this year. Check your steps at foodsafety.gov.
Welcome back to Radio Faces at our Houston Community College Main Street studios. I'm John McClain from the Chronicle, chron.com, Sports Radio 610. He's Indy Kalu with Sports Radio 610. We're going to make the call. We're going to start with the Cowboys, who've lost their last 2 games. Could they possibly lose to the Buccaneers?
No, they can't. When you look at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Raheem Morris has lost that team. You don't send a player like Brian Price, who everybody says is a good guy, home during a game. With the other players we talked about, they see what Kubiak's doing here and they respect that. The other players, they see what Raheem Morris did to Brian Price and they don't respect that. I believe he's lost that locker room. He's on his way out of Tampa Bay, and Dallas is going to beat him. They're going to beat him handedly, 27-13.
Only 27. I'm going with 38-10. I think the Cowboys are going to take that anger out on them. Now Atlanta hosts Jacksonville. Falcons had a great comeback to beat Carolina. Jacksonville put 41 on the Bucks. Can they do it again?
They can't. Not in Atlanta. You said the main thing, Atlanta hosts Jacksonville. Atlanta's an entirely different team when they're playing in their stadium. I believe they're going to shut down MJD, and they're going to win that game 34-14.
I think it's going to be 30-13 Falcons. Matt Ryan, almost invincible at home. Tennessee, coming off that tough loss at home to New Orleans, is still in the wild card race. They go to Indy. Indy trying to get the top pick. Does Indy have a prayer?
Yes. I mean, when you say they're trying to get the top pick, the guys on the field aren't trying to get the top pick. They're trying to get a victory. Tennessee, I believe their chances have been deflated. They're not going to be as energetic because they know they can't win the AFC South. But when it's all said and done, Tennessee's a better team than Indianapolis. They're led by a bunch of coaches, and I see Tennessee winning this game 21-14.
It'll be interesting to see if Matt Hasselbeck plays over Jake Locker. I think they're going to win that game about 23 to, I'm going to say 16 with Dan Orlovsky at the quarterback. Now, Cam Newton's coming to town. We're both fired up about this. You know, their record's not good, but he's been pretty outstanding, but inconsistent with his interceptions. You've played 12 years defensive end. You talked in your Chalk Talk about discipline and staying in your lane. He runs other places. If you were playing on the Texans, how would you approach Cam Newton?
As a pass rusher, if I'm the defensive line coach, I'm really pushing lane integrity this week as I'm working on my moves and getting my guys towards Cam Newton. You still have to be aggressive. You still have to put pressure on him. Like you said, he's a rookie. He's been inconsistent, so you want to put pressure and force him to throw bad throws so Jonathan Joseph or Jason Allen can get another interception. But you do preach lane integrity because with other quarterbacks, if you get out of your lane, Connor Barwin, Brooks Reed, J.J. Watt, they have the speed to correct their issue. But with Cam Newton, if you get out of your lane and you lose containment, he's gone. Either he's going to run for a 20-yard gain or he's going to buy time as he breaks contain and waits for Steve Smith to get open. So I'm teaching lane integrity all week. Okay, say he gets on the second level. The linebackers are just as big as he is. The DBs, of course, are not. He's almost 6'6" and 260. What is a good tackling technique for a guy like that who is big, fast, strong, has some moves? Like a running back, how do you tackle him? Well, if it's Brian Cushing, D'Amico Ryans, or the other linebackers, you hit him head up, mano a mano. If it's Jonathan Joseph, Jason Allen, or the DBs, you take the girl's way out and you go straight for his feet. Take the girl's way out. All right, what do you think the score is going to be? Oh, I definitely think the Texans are going to take this. They're riding high, 24-14. You said 24. I'm going to say 23-17. An explosion of points. They haven't scored much lately with T.J. Yates, but I think what we saw in the last game at Cincinnati shows they're going to score a little bit more every week. Now, he's Indy Kalu. I'm John McClain. Our next show is going to be all about Christmas, and we've got some special Christmas gifts for a lot of people around the NFL, so be sure and watch us next week from our HCC Main Street studio. Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, and goodbye.